I am going to need somebody from the audience to come and give me a hand. Okay, first hand up. Okay. So you can come up here. Okay, but first off, I just want to chat about tools a little bit, okay, about the tools that I use. For me, the most important thing to create the sharp edges is your scraper. Okay, if you don't have the right scraper, you're not going to have those even sides and sharp edge. I used to use those plastic ones that goes like that. Those aren't ideal for doing this because you tend to tilt it backwards. So if you're doing the right way up or upside down, you tend to tilt because there's not a very big edge on the side. So you tend to tilt it out, and then your cake is either doing this or it's doing that. We need a 90-degree angle. Okay, so I found the best scraper to do that is something that stands up on its own. Okay, so there you have your 90-degree angle. So your scraper is very important. Also, don't use the scraper that's got the wooden handle at the back because it's a little longer than the scraper itself. So then what's going to happen is you're going to tilt it as well. Okay, so get something that if you stand it up, will stand up on its own. Okay, for taller cakes, I've got this little taller one here. Okay, I use cake cards under all my cakes. It serves two purposes. I'm going to stack my cake. I already have a board underneath, and I'm also going to use it to create my straight edges. Okay, so every cake that I do has got a cake card underneath. Yeah, I have a level. Okay, very important to have a level. And it's also, there's also a specific way to use it, but I'll show you guys when we get there. Where's my guinea pig? Okay, so your ganache, let me just pull this here. Your ganache needs to be kind of in between peanut butter and Melrose consistency. If it gets any harder, it's going to start sticking to your palette knife, it's going to start sticking to itself, and you're not going to get that smooth finish. Okay, so make sure that your ganache is like peanut butter, Melrose type of consistency. Can everybody see? Okay. If it starts setting, and you'll feel when it starts setting, just pop it in the microwave for a few seconds to get it back to this consistency. So you're going to be in and out of the microwave the whole time with ganache. Unfortunately, that's the... Okay, so now if you want to have a level cake, it's very important that you try and get your layers as even as possible. If you start with even layers, it's going to be much easier for you to level out your cake. Okay, so now to get that sharp edge, the wall, you want to have a nice layer of ganache on the outside. Okay, so if you fit your cake onto your cake board, there needs to be at least a 5 mm gap between your cake and the edge of the board. If there is not, you can trim your cake down. Okay, so for most of my cakes, I need to trim it down so that I have at least a 5 mm gap, and that's going to give me a nice wall of ganache, and you won't see the cake through the ganache, especially when you're doing a naked ganache cake, or not a naked cake, a ganache cake. Okay. What else? We can start. Yay. Okay, so that's yours over there. Just check the consistency. Oh, how do I make my ganache? Okay, I have lots of different ratios depending on the weather and my mood. Okay, so I think what I will do to make it easier for everyone, then you don't have to sit and write here, so I'll post it on South African Sugarcraft, and then everybody can just grab it from there. Then I don't spend the next 10 minutes explaining how to make ganache. Okay. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is just put a little blub. South African Sugarcraft, the South African Sugarcraft page on Facebook. No, it's the page. Okay, so we're just going to put a little bit in the center. This table is so low. Okay, and you want to make sure that you center your cake on your board. Now, if you're going to be putting a filling other than ganache in your cake, something that's going to be runny or that's not going to work well with fondant, what you can do is put some of your ganache in a piping bag and just pipe a little rim of ganache around the outside edge of your cake and put the filling inside. Okay, so that will keep your filling in, it will keep it away from the fondant, and it will also keep your cake secure. The filling won't bleh out the side of the cake. Okay, so that's going to keep everything together. Okay, but for today we'll only use ganache. I mostly just fill my cake with ganache. I hardly ever get a request for any other filling. I mean, it's dark chocolate. Okay, so I'm just going to scoop a bit. Do you want to use a spoon?
I can use a spoon. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, now you want to spread it from the center out because you don't want the center of the ganache to be thicker than the outside. Okay, so we spread it. Oh, sorry. Gosh, where do I put it? There. Okay, so you spread it from the center out so that it's even all the way across the whole cake. Now, while I'm doing this, can I have a little thing here? It's a bit low. Is there something I can put this on, like a box or something? Oh, I love it. Thank you. Okay, so you spread it from the center out, and you want to keep this as even as possible as well. Now, when you're crumb coating or filling your cake, you may get cake crumbs on your palette knife, but you don't want to put that back in your clean ganache. Okay? No, you don't want to put that back in your clean ganache. So I always have a cup or a bucket that I keep close by to just take the dirty ganache off. So don't throw that dirty ganache away. You can remelt it and then use it to dirty ice your other cakes. Okay, but we don't want to put a dirty palette knife back in your beautiful clean ganache. Okay.
Fully.
Okay. Also what I do is the bottom side of the cake, when you layer your cake, the bottom side that's in the pan, that part is going to be the top layer because that's the most even layer. Center. What you can do while you are layering your cake is you can just take your scraper around to make sure that the cake is not touching the scraper at any point. Okay, because where it's touching the scraper, you're not going to have that wall of ganache. Okay, you're going to have cake shining through. So make sure when you're layering your cake, it's not touching your scraper at any point. And you want to put your scraper down and up against your cake card to get that 90 degrees. Okay.
Got it. This is great. It's cool. You can share. I didn't. I'm sorry. My bad, guys.
There's a cloth there if you need to.
Oh, you're a star. Thank you.
Okay, so we're spreading inside out.
You guys have the edges of the it's totally fine.
That's fine.
I was one that's better with crumb. Oh, if your eyes looking stay. Do you need anything more?
Just check. Yeah, still fine, still fine.
Oh, well,
Still fine.
okay. I think you got two half and I got the other half. That,
Oh, no.
That's okay.
Okay. So that looks even already. Okay, now I just want to take a thin layer on the outside. This is called the crumb coat or the dirty ice. This is just to trap any crumbs on your cake so that when you do the final coat, you won't have any crumbs laying around. Okay, so I do the crumb coat, clean everything up, make sure there's no cake crumbs anywhere before I do the final coat. But for today's purposes, we'll just quickly clean up. Okay, let's just put this here quickly, love. So just a thin layer. This doesn't have to be thick or neat or anything. It's really just to trap all those crumbs. You can, if you prefer to use a turntable. I don't like using a turntable. I don't use one. But if you are comfortable using one, then you are more than welcome to use a turntable. Some people find it easier. I find it a bit annoying because it keeps moving when I'm, yeah. The only time I use a turntable is when I'm decorating, putting things on a cake, then I can turn it quickly, or if I'm airbrushing the cake. Okay, now normally I would put this in the fridge for a little bit. We don't have that luxury today. So I would put this in the fridge for about 20 minutes or so while I crumb coat the rest of my cakes. Just to set it up a bit. Okay, and at any point, you can just take your scraper around your cake board just to make sure that you're not touching anywhere. If it is touching, just trim it off and then eat the leftovers. Are you doing that?
I'm loving this. This is so much fun. This is getting me in the groove.
Okay, see, I just did a boo-boo there. I stuck my dirty spatula back in my ganache. Now I have cake crumbs in there. Okay. So there are different ways that I do sharp edge ganache, depending on what I feel like. For me, the easiest way is to do it upside down. So you can either do it with acetate, taped to your board. Today I'm going to show you how to use the wax paper with only one cake card. I don't use two. Okay. Oh, also guys, just a little tip. Have old boards around that you can work on. Because you don't want to work on the board that you're going to give to your customer. The ganache gets underneath, you get cake crumbs underneath, and then your customer comes and takes their cake, and they put it on their beautifully white hired tablecloth, and then when they take it off, there's oily, dark chocolate marks on it. Okay, so always have extra boards that you're working on, and once you're done with your cake, the fondant is on, then you can place it onto a clean board for the customer. Okay. Okay. So that's the extent of the crumb coat. You don't have to do anything more than that. Okay, so it's just trapping all those crumbs. Where's this? Any questions so far? Okay, now the fun starts. We're going to flip this cake upside down. Okay, and then level it. What? Yeah, we're going to flip it upside down. First things first, we need to take it off this one. You can just place it on the piece of wax there. Okay, we're going to put a nice blob. Nice thick layer at the top because we're going to use this layer to even out the cake, to get that flat surface and the level. Okay, so again.
Yeah, thank you, sorry, love. No problem.
So a nice fat layer at the top. We're going to push out all the extras, so don't worry about it, and just scrape it up. Okay. So again, from the center out. I've got a bit of chocolate there. That didn't melt.
Oh, it happens in water.
Okay, now you want to take your baking paper, not wax paper. I said wax paper earlier. Baking paper.
What's the difference?
Wax paper will have you crying in your hands.
Ah.
It will tear. Okay, grab your wax paper. We're not just going to plonk this on the top because we're going to trap air inside. So we want to place it on from the side. Sorry? Baking paper. What did I say? Baking paper. We're going to place it on the side and then just smooth it on. Just trying to get all the air out. Okay, this table is actually so low. Okay, you're going to take a board. Make sure you get a board with a nice surface. Some of them have got the corrugated cardboard showing through. Just try and get one that's got a nice, the smoothest surface that you can find. Okay, where's the lapis?
Oh, my bad. Oh, Lord.
Don't worry. It's not so bad.
This is like that pancake advert.
So place your board on top. And you want to place your hands over each other. Don't put your hand on the sides. You're going to drop your cake. So make sure that when you flip it, your hands are placed over each other. And just flip it over fast. Okay, now you want to check if your cake is level. We've been doing pretty good up until now, but we're not sure if it's completely level. And that's where this little duty comes in. Another way to use this, you need to make sure that the surface you're working on is level first before you put it on the cake. Because your table could be skew, and you put it on your cake and you think your cake is level, but it's doing this. Okay, so I'm checking my surface. It's level. If I put it on top of the cake, you can see it's higher on this side. So I'm just going to, that thick layer of chocolate I put on, just going to squish some of it out. There, it's level. Check all the sides. It's a little bit higher there. Squish some of that chocolate out.
Okay.
Okay, and if you've got a lot of chocolate coming out the side, you can just
That side.
scoop it up.
Yeah, leaning that way, so squish on that side.
Okay, so to use this, you'll know which side is higher depending on what line the bubble is touching. So if the bubble is touching this line, it means the side is higher. So just give it a
Squish. Ah, look at that. Sorry, guys. Completely
just check
like
both
in
sides.
cake.
Yeah. Now you want to keep your level the same way that you checked your table.
Oh, okay, so you don't switch it. All right. Oh, Lord, now I must keep spirit levels away from everyone else. Win.
Okay, now the next thing I'm going to do is just put some ganache in this gap here just to secure it all down. So never put any downward pressure on your cake. Okay, we've already checked now that it's level. The last thing you want to do is go and put weight there and then push it unlevel. Okay, so we're not going to put any downward pressure on the cake. Where's, oh, here's my ganache. Now, normally this would only happen after 20 minutes of it being in the fridge. Okay.
Feeling very professional right now. Very.
Okay, so just you see the ganache that's coming out?
And can you sort of lift it up? Oh, so that's the other reason for the very sticky chocolate.
Any questions? No? No. That's why you need to trim your cake down. If I use a 6-inch cake, I use a 6-inch board. Sometimes some cakes that you bake, it shrinks, so it will be a little bit smaller. Other cakes don't have that much shrinkage, so you need to trim it down. So if I use a 6-inch cake, I'm going to use a 6-inch board. Yeah. We're not lucky like they are in the USA where they have like a 6.2-inch board. Ah, so there's a gap in the market.
Ah.
Okay, so it's still looking very rough right now, but don't worry. Guys, it's also very important to just step away from your work and look at it. Like really, the best judge is your eye. I sometimes go stand in the door over there and I'm like, also, Ganache gets very messy. I don't know how these YouTubers do it. They do these amazing cakes and there's not a stitch of Ganache anyway. I'm like, lies! Exactly.
Oh, the magic of editing.
No, either or. Dark or white. The dark chocolate is not as finicky as the white. If your consistency of the white is not lacquer or you've chilled it too much and it gets too cold, it tends to crack and just like give you a headache. Dark chocolate ganache is much more forgiving because it's actual chocolate. White chocolate's not chocolate.
It actually is not at all.
No.
Found that out. Very sweet.
Okay, so now I've gone all around. Just want to see if I've... Oop. Okay, so now you can just take your scraper around. Okay, and what you want to do is try not to scrape like this. You want to get that angle. So let me just show you quickly. You can clearly see where I'm still missing ganache. If I have that 90-degree angle there, where I still need to, can you guys see? So that needs to be filled in with ganache. That's why I love these scrapers, because then you can see exactly where you still need to fill in. Can you see? Everybody see? Cool. These were from, I got some at Miss Daisy, I got some at Baker's Corner, and I got some at the shop in Joburg. What's it called? So when I see them, I buy them. I've got like a whole drawer full of them.
When you start filling more.
Yeah.
Okay.
So once you've gone around, you can start. Okay, so what I teach in my class, my sharp edge class, because I have a lot of absolute beginners coming to this class who's never done ganache or any kind of straight edge or anything like that. So they still work a little bit slower. Now ganache sets very quickly. Okay, so if you are still at the level where you're still working a bit slower, I normally suggest that they do their cakes in ganache, their cakes in sections. Because if you're slower and you're putting ganache and smoothing ganache all the way around, by the time you get back here, it's going to be set. Okay, so I do one section, smooth it, do the next section, smooth it, do the next section. Okay, that's for beginners. If the faster you work or the faster you get, because obviously with a lot of practice you're going to get a lot faster, then you can do it in one go. Okay, so I'm going to do it in thirds. So I'm going to add a thick coating. Oh, it's hot in here. Yo. So I'm going to add a thick coating.
Hey, really cheese, man.
And then I'm going to smooth that section where I just added. Okay, you'll start seeing that it starts smoothing out. It's just very soft. It's so hot in here. So this is one that I did earlier that had time to chill in the refrigerator. I'll take off that paper now and just show you guys what the end result is of doing this as soon as I've finished the ganache here.
It's like way more difficult than it seems, eh?
Okay, let me show you.
Yeah. What do you think about nothing?
You see it?
This is gross.
Okay, guys, I may need to just pop this in the fridge for 5 minutes because it's very hot in here and it's not setting nicely. Okay, so now you can clearly see what I still need to add when you start smoothing it out. Okay, so once I'm done with this layer, I'm just going to pop it in the fridge for a couple of minutes, then I'll remove the wax paper off that one to show you guys. How you doing?
You're getting there, man. Getting there. This is grand.
Okay.
Because I thought that's been look after that one.
Okay. Okay, it's not happening right now because it's so hot, but clean your scraper off regularly. You don't want the ganache to set hard on this side here. If you have hard bits of ganache and you scrape your cake, you're going to scrape a line in your ganache. Okay, and then you need to fold that in again. So make sure that your scraper is cleaned regularly, no hard ganache on there. And you also want to make sure that the ganache doesn't get hard on here, because if you have hard ganache on here, it's just going to pull that ganache off your cake. Okay. Okay. I think I'm this. Okay. So at this stage, we're just going to quickly pop it in just to set a little bit. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very wobbly. Okay, I'm just going to send someone to go pop that in. But just to show you guys, so this was same process. I put the dirty coat on. Can you just pop it in the fridge for me a little bit? Yeah, because it's so soft. And that one. Okay, so same process, dirty ice in the fridge for a little while, and then I put the next coat on and smoothed it. This one is very small, so I did it in one go. But this is basically what you end up having. If you pop it back over, you'll have a sharp edge. Okay, sometimes you do trap a bubble here or there. Just take very soft ganache. And just on that spot, you want to fill that bubble. Scrape it off, okay? It's just on that spot. Okay.
Yay! ganache? Because when I've made it before, it stays tacky. It just stays tacky.
It depends on what ratio you're using for your ganache.
It's so like
Okay.
a 2 to 1, 2 chocolate to 1 cream. I don't know.
No.
I'm a YouTube person, yo.
No, not in South Africa.
Okay.
Was that UK channels you're watching when it's cold?
Every channel, everywhere. And
No.
they say you keep it in the fridge, it goes hard.
No, that is a very low ratio for ganache. That's for like other things when you're using it for desserts and
Okay.
you know
Or
when
just
it's
as a
quite
plain
spreadable
filling.
and yeah. But like I said, I'm going to post it. This is a 3.4. Oh, sorry, 2.4 ratio, 2.4 to 1. But I will post it on.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
Thank
you need to put your
kindly.
ratio a little bit up for
Yeah.
it to set.
Yeah,
Okay.
I feel you. I feel you.
Questions?
It tastes great. It tastes great.
Yes. I use Choc-X. I find it works the best and it tastes good. The Choc-X dark chocolate. Okay, so when you're scraping, do you want to come here and see? So let's say this goodie is upside down. Okay, so let's say your cake is upside down, you're busy nothing, and you have a big piece sticking out there. Gosh, you guys can't see it. And you have ganache coming out the side. What you're going to do is your scraper is going to go flat on your cake board, and this is going to go up against your cake card. Okay, so that will give you that, and you can just take it off. Okay, so make sure that your scraper is flat on your surface, and this is pushed up against your cake card so you can get that even wall and your sharp edge. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But I don't work with buttercream, but yes. Yes, it does. If they want a buttercream cake, yes, it works with buttercream. But in some, I convince them otherwise. Okay, if you are going to be doing buttercream, then I'm going to suggest that you crumb coat your cake in ganache first. Just a layer of ganache to keep it in place. Because if you crumb coat with buttercream and it's hot, it's going to be like... Okay, so yeah, if I have to do a buttercream cake, then I put a layer of ganache first, just to keep everything in
I've got
place.
a feeling you don't like buttercream much.
Does it show? Oh. Any other questions for me? Yes, same process. You can do white chocolate ganache, dark chocolate ganache, buttercream. You can even do a mixture of buttercream and ganache. Gives you a nice consistency as well. This, definitely, yeah. Okay, let me explain to you if you're going to be putting fondant onto your, good question, thank you. If you're going to be putting fondant onto this, you want to make sure that it's set all the way through. So what I do is this will not go back in the refrigerator now. I will let my cake set overnight at room temperature in a cool place. Okay, and then it will be sturdy, perfect for fondant. Okay, if you try and fondant a cold cake, if you're going to leave your ganache cake in the refrigerator, it's going to make your fondant very, very tacky. Okay, and then also you could end up with things like cracks in your ganache because when air gets cold, it contracts. So when you put there may still be air bubbles in your cake. When you put it in the fridge, that air will get cold and it will contract. And then when you take it out, it's going to heat up and expand, and it can crack your ganache or give you that hideous bubble when you put your ganache on. So I work with my cakes at room temperature. I let it set up at room temperature. The only time it's going to go in the fridge is when in between the dirty ice process and the, yeah. Yes, so I use this board to stack my cakes as well. Now when I stack my cakes, I have a board underneath that's going to be supported on my dowels. Mm. Oh, so now say this is my finished cake. It needs to go onto a board now. All you got to do, I use chocolate. Some people use royal icing. I use chocolate because it sets very quickly. Just a little bit of melted chocolate, and you place this cake back on the board wherever you need to, if it's offset, if it's center. So that will keep your cake on the customer board. No, no. I never remove the boards, it stays there. The board needs to stay there because your dowel sticks needs to be underneath something. You need something to support. If you don't have a cake board underneath your cake and you dowel your cake, it's going to sink down onto your dowels and still damage your cake anyway. You must always have a cake board underneath your cake that's going to go on top of your dowel sticks. If you are going to be doing a center dowel, but I'll explain this later as well when I do the stacking. If you're going to be doing a center dowel, then you can drill your holes in all your boards before you do this process. Okay, it's easier to have holes already in the board than trying to hammer a center dowel. No. What if you miss? Oh, I just rub a bit of water on it. Some people use Tyler's glue. Some people use water. Spray. Yeah, yeah. Anything else? Yeah, just you need to make it just tacky, not wet. Okay, because then you're going to melt your fondant. Okay, so not too much, just enough to make it tacky to the touch. Yeah. Yes? No. Does that answer your question? Anything else? That's it?